Tashdile and welcome to Tibet This Week. This is Sakina Bhatt with another edition of Weekly News on Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration. Let's look at the headlines first. His Holiness the Dalai Lama delivers a special message to the 11th General Assembly of the Asian Buddhist Conference for Peace. CTA President addresses the meeting of cross-party group for Tibet in Scottish Parliament and meets members of Scottish Parliament. Tibetan Parliamentary Delegation meets Congressmen, Congresswomen, leaders of Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch and others. Swiss MPs question government over Tibet and its bilateral human rights dialogue with China. Chief Election Commissioner speaks to Tibetans in Toronto. China resumes expulsion drive at Yachen Tibetan Buddhist Institute, thousands evicted. US State Department releases annual International Religious Freedom Report. 11th Asian Buddhist Conference for Peace concludes with strongest representation of Tibetan Buddhist tradition. His Holiness the Dalai Lama delivered a special message to the 11th General Assembly of the Asian Buddhist Conference for Peace on the occasion of its 50th anniversary held in Ulaanbaatar, the capital city of Mongolia.
관계 투쟁에 손에 따와던지 방배 치르스 담배션에 던져와서 시기 무루루고 숭리 자상가 산지 좀 된데게 아니 대버지고 계시면서 지금 나란서 아니 동네 용야디 아니 머리고 왕게 동네 용기여다 디 머리고서야디 그 치질로가 따와 인데버지 치질로가 따와디 The
4-day conference brought together efforts of Buddhists in support of consolidating universal peace, harmony and cooperation among the Asian countries and its people. His Holiness advised the people of Mongolia and other Southeast nations to study Buddhist philosophy as it is now being studied even by the Western scientists. The President of Central Tibetan Administration, Dr. Lobsang Singye, met with representatives of major Tibet-related charities operating in the UK organized by Tibet House Trust as part of its 25th anniversary activities on Wednesday last week. The President used the opportunity to thank the charities for their contributions towards the Tibetan education, health and community development. The Office of Tibet, London, in collaboration with the Tibetan community in Britain, organized a youth outreach event where Dr. Singye was invited to speak. The President urged them not to forget the Tibetan identity, advising them that they should integrate but not assimilate. He further spoke about the forthcoming 550 Youth Forum to be held in Dharamshala and urged for their active participation. The President began his day on 20th June with an interview for Financial Times. The question ranged from the reincarnation issue, China's role in redefining human rights, the Belt and Road Initiative, and the growing influence of the United Front. The President also attended a closed-door roundtable discussion with UK-based academics and China experts to explore possibilities for resumption of dialogue. Dr. Lobsang Singye joined eminent scientists for a panel discussion on climate change and Tibet at University College London's Darwin Lecture Theatre on Friday last week. The President remarked about the strategic importance of the Tibetan Plateau as the largest repository of fresh water outside North and South Poles, a water tower of Asia with 1.4 billion people in downstream countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh and Myanmar, depending on the water from the Tibetan rivers. He expressed alarm at the latest BBC report of the 19th June, which found that the melting of the Himalayan glaciers has doubled over the last 40 years. Dr. Singye was welcomed at the dinner hosted by the Tibetan community in Scotland on Monday this week. Dr. Singye spoke on the importance of preserving the Tibetan identity and culture. He also explained the functioning of CTA and its achievements in the fields of education and community development. Speaking on the middle way approach, he expressed optimism that dialogue can be re-established with the Chinese authorities. Dr. Singye also released the Silver Jubilee Souvenir magazine of Tibet House Trust, which is celebrating 25th founding anniversary this year. CTA President addressed the meeting of the cross-party group for Tibet in the Scottish Parliament. Dr. Singh had one-to-one interactions with individual members of the Scottish Parliament, in which he urged the members to speak out for protection of Tibet's fragile environment. Speaker John Bercow of the UK House of Commons acknowledges the presence of CTA President Dr. Lobsang Singye during a House proceeding in the presence of Prime Minister Theresa May on Thursday this week.
Finally, as I know there is very widespread concern in this House on the matter of human rights, I hope colleagues will be pleased later to welcome to our proceedings. Indeed, I think he can be welcomed now, the Sikyong of the Central Tibetan Administration, Lobsang Sangye, who's been here before and he's here again. He represents, in a very important way, the people of Tibet. We identify with you, sir. It's a pleasure to see you again, and I think colleagues will feel that way, and I'm looking forward to seeing you later today. Please continue your good and important work, even in the face of very considerable pressures.
Acknowledging his gratitude, Dr. Singye began his talk on the topics geopolitics of China in Europe, Tibet, a case study.
As envisioned by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, we want to solve the issue of Tibet through what we call the middle way approach, which is to seek genuine autonomy within the framework of the Chinese constitution, within China. This is a win-win proposition.
He further called on the UK government to replicate the US success of the Reciprocal Access to Tibet Act. The Tibetan Parliamentary Delegation and Representative Ngodub Tsering met with leaders of civil societies at the conference room of Human Rights Watch on Thursday last week. The members of the parliament spoke on the dire situation in Tibet and asked them if they could visit Tibet and find more about the real situation for them, and also expressed their appreciation for the pro-justice effort. The members of the delegation, on meeting with the Congressman David Price, the chairman of House Democratic Partnership, informed the Congressman about the repressive situation in Tibet and sought his help in pressuring China to let His Holiness return to Tibet. The Congressman assured to offer his full support. The delegations also met with Congresswoman Betty McCollum and briefed her on the situation of Tibet. Talking about a visit to Tibet a few years ago, Congresswoman stated that she witnessed Tibetan monks under constant surveillance and felt the immense pressure they must be under. The Chief Election Commissioner of Central Tibetan Administration, Sonam Chopel Shosur, addressed the Tibetan community in Toronto, Canada on Saturday last week. Shosur spoke about the amendments to the rules governing the elections of Sikyong and members of Tibetan Parliament in exile. He is also scheduled to visit New York and address the local Tibetan community on the revised provisions in the election rules. Members of the Swiss Parliament questioned the federal government over Tibet and effectiveness of Switzerland's bilateral human rights dialogue with China. The members submitted interpellations supported by various other parliamentarians during the session that concluded on 21st June. Raising the worsening human rights situation in Tibet and East Turkestan, especially since Xi Jinping came into power, MP Maya Graft asked the government about the effectiveness of Switzerland's bilateral human rights dialogue with China. The visit of UN High Commissioner to Tibet was also questioned. Referring Switzerland's recommendation accepted by China in the second cycle Universal Periodic Review in 2013, MP Fabian Molina asked Switzerland's bilateral and multilateral efforts in ensuring China allowing the visit of UN High Commissioner to China, including Tibet and East Turkestan. The federal will respond to the interpellations in the next spring session scheduled to take place in September. Yachen, a major Tibetan Buddhist center in Tibet's Karzai region, is facing eviction once again. Despite international outcry against the forceful removal of practitioners and demolition of Larunghar, Chinese authorities have resumed expulsion of 3,500 Tibetan nuns and monks at Yachen. In 2016, Chinese authorities undertook a mass eviction and demolition of Larunghar, world's biggest Tibetan Buddhist institute, and Yachen that led to destruction of several thousand monastic dwellings and expulsion of monks and nuns. The United States government released its annual International Religious Freedom Report, a report that covers repressive government policies that infringe upon religious freedom. In the report, 16 countries that meet the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998 standard for countries of particular concern are countries whose government engages or tolerates severe religious freedom violations, violations that are systematic, ongoing, and egregious. China has been labeled under a countries of particular concern country along with North Korea, Syria, and Russia.
And in China, the government's intense persecution of many faiths, Falun Gong practitioners, Christians, and Tibetan Buddhists among them, is the norm. The Chinese Communist Party has exhibited extreme hostility to all religious faiths since its founding. The party demands that it alone be called God.
According to the report, U.S. officials regularly expressed concerns to the Chinese government at senior levels regarding severe restrictions imposed on Tibetans' ability to exercise their human rights and fundamental freedoms, including religious freedom and cultural rights. The Tibetan delegation made the strongest representation at the 11th General Assembly of Asian Buddhist Conference for Peace in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia on Sunday this week. The Tibetan Buddhist delegation was led by Venerable Thubten Nodub, the medium of state Nechung oracle. His Holiness the Dalai Lama's honorary representative Telotulku Rinpoche also joined and presented His Holiness's message to the conference on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the Asian Buddhist Conference for Peace and spoke during the second-day plenary session dedicated to preservation of heritage and values. In 1969, 3 legendary monks of the 20th century had discussed the prevailing situation of Buddhism in the region and to explore the possibility of setting up a Pan-Asia Buddhist organization. In the course of the meeting, they agreed to establish an international Buddhist organization in Ulaanbaatar. Venerable Karma Gelek Yuthok, Karle of Department of Religion and Culture, Central Tibetan Administration, issued a press release congratulating the Asian Buddhist Conference for Peace in its successful completion in Mongolia and the Tibetan delegation's participation in the 50th anniversary celebration and the 11th General Assembly of Asian Buddhist Conference for Peace, which he remarked was a grand success despite intense interference from the Chinese Foreign Ministry. That's all for this week's edition of Tibet This Week. See you next time and have a great weekend.